If ever there was a vehicle to fire a shot across the bows of Australia's best utes, it's surely the new GWM Cannon Alpha. So what opposition to better test it up against than the latest 48-volt mild hybrid version of the legendary Toyota HiLux? Can the Chinese newcomer bridge the gap? Let's light the fuse on this Comparo and find out. Okay, so both these vehicles are members of the immensely popular dual cab segment. They both have turbo diesel engines, 4x4 systems, ladder frames, double wishbone front ends, and leaf springs at the rear to help them conquer the tough stuff and carry payloads. One of the ways they do differ is on the dollars. This is the highest spec Cannon Alpha Ultra, and it fires one of its best shots by being priced well under $60,000 drive away, backed up by a heap of high-end equipment. The HiLux SR5 with V-Active technology, Toyota doesn't like to call it a hybrid, is almost $70,000 on the road, and that's before you add in this test vehicle's $2,500 optional interior pack with black leather trim. The Cannon Alpha hits the bullseye again with its longer warranty, free 7-year roadside assist and longer service intervals. We just don't know what the servicing costs will be yet. The HiLux is pretty affordable to service, especially over the first 3 years, but it escalates from there. The Cannon Alpha is a big vehicle, substantially bigger than the HiLux in every direction, including wheelbase. Its key exterior features include side steps, roof rails, 18-inch alloys, LED headlights and a spray-in tub liner. There's no sports bar or tonneau cover to dress up the rear, but there is a party trick or two back there we'll show you in a minute. The HiLux SR5 gets a sports bar and matches the Cannon with its 18-inch alloys, side steps and LED headlights, but it misses out on roof rails and a tub liner. Up front is a new bumper and mesh grille, and that's the mild visual evidence of this 2024 update. There's some gloss black exterior trimmings added as well. The Cannon Alpha's pretty orthodox under the bonnet, where you'll find a 2.4 litre turbo diesel 4-cylinder engine, a 9-speed auto of GWM's own design, and a part-time 4x4 system with low range to drive the four wheels. Flip to the HiLux SR5, and there's the same old 2.8 litre 4-cylinder engine, turbo diesel of course, 6-speed auto and 4x4 combo. But to that, with V-Active technology, what Toyota's added here is a small battery pack, a motor generator and a DC to DC converter. Power and torque stays the same as an orthodox SR5 HiLux, but fuel consumption is claimed to be 10% improved, in part thanks to a new idle stop system. Jump in the Cannon Alpha and it feels and looks more like a luxury SUV than a working ute. These huge screens make an impression, as does the loud woodwork. The seats are large, comfortable and powered. Yet you really get a sense you're getting value for money here. Drill a bit deeper and you'll find the Cannon Alpha is well bolted together. Nothing squeaks or rattles or is loose, the doors don't feel tinny, and nothing fell off during our time with the vehicle. There's no shortage of places to put things up front in the Cannon Alpha. There's a deep lidded bin that doubles as a cooler box, a double cup holder, big door bins and a sizable glove box. There's also a storage area carved into the transmission tunnel on the driver's side, where you'll also find some USB points. Okay, so the screens look more intimidating than they actually are, but they're still not as simple and easy to interact with as they should be. For instance, there's some strange misses going on here. No tachometer in the instrument cluster, and if you want to reset the volume, there's no obvious way to do it on the dashboard. And despite all these hard buttons for the dual zone air conditioning down here, you still have to go into the touchscreen to reset the temperature. It just seems a bit counterintuitive to me. The good news is the Cannon Alpha offers wireless or cable connection of both Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, as well as having the full suite of radio bands including AM, satellite navigation and wireless phone charging. The embedded sat-nav map can be displayed across the instrument cluster as well. Your smartphone app map can also be shown on the cluster, but in very limited form. Now this is spectacularly good vision. The screen is large and the picture quality of the 360-degree camera is excellent. There are also abundant features here, a variety of panoramic views, even a see-through option that is especially helpful when parking or driving at low speed off-road. There are also parking sensors to aid getting in and out of those tight parking spots. Get into the HiLux SR5 and it feels smaller, older and less techy than the Cannon Alpha, because it is. But having said that, I do like this premium interior. Sure, it's optional, but it's also done quite a lot to lift the ambience of the interior and make it feel more cohesive than the standard SR5. Like the Cannon Alpha, the HiLux SR5 feels well bolted together. It's typical Toyota in its solidity. But the aged design struggles to match the Cannon Alpha on storage. The double glove box is its party trick, but generally it just doesn't have as many useful places to put things as the GWM. But while the HiLux SR5 lacks the glitz and glamour of the Cannon Alpha, it's a hell of a lot easier to adjust simple things like volume and temperature thanks to the hard buttons on the dashboard. And there's a proper tachometer dial in the analog instrument cluster. Thank you. More than likely you'll plug in your smartphone app and use the infotainment system that way. It just makes more sense. While apps require cable connection, there is wireless phone charging now. There's also sat-nav and Bluetooth streaming as backup. It also has fewer features to help gauge what's going on around the vehicle. It's basic. Undoubtedly, the Cannon Alpha presents as the more sophisticated and modern option when it comes to the interior and tech, but it also lacks user-friendliness. The HiLux SR5 won't impress your friends when they get in, but its physical controls make it easier to like and live with. The Cannon Alpha has a much longer list of safety features than the HiLux SR5. For instance, it not only warns you if you're wandering from your lane, it tries to keep you centered in the first place. The Toyota doesn't do that, but the poor tuning of some of the GWM's driver aids negate their value. We'll delve into that in more detail shortly. The longer wheelbase of the Cannon Alpha really pays off in the back seat. There's more space back here than in any ute this side of one of the full-size US trucks. And the feature list is strong, with aircon vents, storage options in the seats and doors, USBs and even seats that slide as well as fold. It's back to dual cab orthodoxy in the HiLux SR5. It's cramped and upright in here. There are decent features such as map pockets, door bins, air vents, USB outlets and an armrest with cup holders, but only 1/3 of the seat base flips up. Okay, so let's talk trays. And despite being shorter and narrower, the HiLux actually has the bigger tray and it has a sizable payload advantage of nearly 200 kilograms. However, neither ute can fit an Aussie pallet between the wheel arches. Okay, so advantage HiLux, but the Cannon Alpha does have a pretty cool party trick. Check this out. Short press here, tailgate opens. Long press, lowers. Pretty cool, huh? Just hope it hangs together. You sit high and mighty in the Cannon Alpha with all the adjustments you need to get comfortable. But once you get rolling, it's apparent it suffers from the same calibration issues as many other Chinese vehicles. The steering wheel dodges away from lines, real and imaginary. The driver monitoring constantly admonishes you to pay attention, even if you've just glanced away at the touch screen. The adaptive cruise control does the same thing when it's activated, and the soft touch blinkers only return haphazardly. And then you've got that cherry on top, the bing, every time you creep just over the speed limit. Look, it's all unnecessary, it's poorly tuned, and it's so irritating. Some stuff can be permanently switched off, some of it has to be switched off every time you get in the car. And some of it, like the blinkers, you just have to put up with. Driving down the road, intermittently signalling left and right. Oh, painful. Deal with all that crap and dig down to the powertrain and you'll find it does a pretty decent job. Look, it's got to haul 2.5 tons of curb weight, so it's no firecracker, but it's responsive, it's smooth, and pretty quiet when you get it up and running. The GWM 9-speed auto isn't as well calibrated, there's that word again, as the 6-speed in the Toyota. The shifts are more obvious, it feels a bit busier, and there's a bit of laggy response here and there at times. But overall, it's all pretty decent. And you know what? It handles pretty well for what it is. Yeah, sure, it's big, heavy, high, ponderous, and all that sort of stuff. But the marvels of electric assist steering mean it's pretty easy to wheel around, even in the tight stuff. And the basic setup is safety first, understeer or front wheel push, and that's secure. It's the right way to go for a vehicle like this. And that dynamic ability also translates into a good ride. The Cannon Alpha does a pretty good job of ironing out lumpy surfaces. It's a bit brittle at low speed, but all things considered, how these vehicles are set up with their leaf spring rear ends and their need to carry big loads or no load or what have you, it does a pretty good job. So far, so good. But to add some intrigue, we loaded 650 kilograms in the tray and headed off to do our test loop again. The nose went up, the tail went down, the engine strained under the weight. The brakes, discs all round happily, worked harder to pull everything up. And there was an impact on ride smoothness and handling immediacy, but it was not a disastrous deterioration. The HiLux SR5 instantly feels more nimble and zippier than the Cannon Alpha, which is no surprise because it's roughly 400 kilos lighter. And thankfully there's no inanimate objects either trying to steer or admonishing you or just going bing bong. Bliss. And so we get to the centerpiece of the new HiLux SR5, the 48 volt powertrain. Look, I think it's got a bit more step-in throttle response, a little bit more zing, but otherwise it's pretty familiar. You know, this engine is pretty strong, pretty coarse, and pretty loud when you give it some throttle and accelerate. Enthusiastic, sure, but refined, not really. Now, the other part of this story is the fuel economy impact, and we'll get to that in a second. Being lighter and smaller than the Cannon Alpha, no surprise the HiLux SR5 feels that little bit more nimble on the road. It's also helped by hydraulic steering that makes it feel more connected and grounded as well. Look, it's not night and day difference, but the HiLux is the nicer vehicle to drive. There's also a difference in ride quality between the two, but this time it's in the favour of the Cannon Alpha. It just smooths the road out better. The rougher it gets, the more frame shake the HiLux SR5 generates. And then add load. With 650 kilograms on board, the HiLux SR5 also degrades in every measurable performance. Although we didn't strike specific issues, it's disappointing it still runs only a disc drum brake combo. Really, in this day and age? The biggest impact literally of adding the extra load was on ride quality, which just got even shakier on the rough stuff. And so to fuel economy, and here the HiLux had a clear advantage both with and without a load. In fact, there's clear evidence here that the 48 volt system has improved things markedly. Last time we tested the standard SR5 with and without 650 kilograms over our test loop, it came in at 11 litres per 100 kilometres and 12.5 litres per 100 kilometres. So this is clearly an improvement. So which is better to drive? Well, if you can be bothered dealing with all the overlaid annoyances that come with the Cannon Alpha, then it does provide a quieter and more comfortable drive. Call it pretty close to a draw. Okay, so let's do some off-roading. But first we'll check out our two contenders, see what they offer. The Cannon Alpha has all the usual ingredients you'd expect to hit the bush, but it also adds a front diff locker, which is helpful in extreme situations. The HiLux, well, we all know the HiLux is one of the most capable off-roading dual cab utes, but in V-Active technology, guys, it adds a multi-terrain system that tailors the powertrain in both high and low range 4x4. All right, got some stuff to test. Let's see what we find. To be honest, the Cannon Alpha feels pretty unstoppable. Its combination of mechanical and traction aids ensure you should be able to get up just about any sensible obstacle and then back down again. It did touch down once or twice through the lumps, but not too badly. The HiLux is simply great. It really does comfortably and safely deal with challenging obstacles, and being smaller than the GWM, it's easier to manoeuvre around. So where does all that leave us? The Cannon Alpha is an excellent value package laden with gear, space and technical highlights, but it loses some of its shine when it hits the road. The HiLux is a tried and true warrior that's been mildly updated for 2024. It's more expensive, yet feels and looks less premium. The good news for GWM is the Cannon Alpha is their best effort at a dual cab ute yet. Frustratingly though, it's still not complete. There's lots of bits and bobs and technology, but it just doesn't all gel well enough together. Get that right and it would have comfortably won this comparo. But they don't, so we've gone with the tried and trusted option, which is the HiLux. Even so, it was such a close call, and yet more evidence that the Chinese brands are coming to Australia and coming hard.